Hello, welcome. My name is Justin Harpin. I'm joining you today from Hong Kong, and I'm pleased to introduce the speaker today as part of this 21st Century Learning online conference series. We have today joining us Lauren White, who's from Central Insights in London, and she is going to share today some research, some findings that they've done around the future of learning, the impact of EdTech on learning outcomes in low middle income countries. So I would like to hand it over to Lauren now, and I'll add her slides in. And as with all of these online sessions, please do drop in the chat where you're joining from, any questions you have, and then we'll get to those at the end of the session. So over to you, Lauren.
Thank you very much, Justin, for that introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Lauren White, and I'm an insights analyst at the GSMA. So I'm going to be presenting some recent research that my team at the GSMA has conducted on the opportunity of EdTech to address challenges in the education sector of the Philippines. So whilst this research focused specifically on the Philippines, many of the learnings are applicable to other countries and regions, and I am really excited to share some of those with you today. So a little bit about us. So the GSMA is the global association of mobile operators and organizations in the wider mobile ecosystem. At the GSMA Mobile for Development, our mission is to drive innovation in digital technology to support sustainable and inclusive development. This includes a wide variety of activities, including advocacy, research, and we also have our Innovation Fund, which provides grants and technical assistance to innovators working with mobile and digital technologies in low and middle income countries for impact. Our round looking at AI in Asia and Africa has just recently been launched, and if you would like to learn more about that, I encourage you to take a look at our website. Our team at the Central Insights Unit works with regional offices of the UK FCDO on country-specific research projects. Southeast Asia is a region of particular interest for us, where we hope to continue to expand our knowledge base. And that's where this particular piece of research fits in. We worked in collaboration with the British Embassy Manila, looking at the opportunity of EdTech. So today I'm going to talk you through the objectives of our research, some of the key challenges in education that EdTech can help address, then talk you through through the 6 use cases of EdTech that we identified, spotlighting a few of the solutions that we came across, as well as spending some time talking specifically on the use of AI in education. I'll then highlight some of the key parameters to measuring the effectiveness of EdTech solutions and some of the barriers to the development, deployment, and adoption of EdTech. If you're watching this live, we would love to hear from you in the comments. If anything resonates with you particularly well, whether you've had any similar experiences or whether you have any questions about what I'm sharing with you today. So moving on to the research. The objective of our research was to explore the opportunity of EdTech to address some of the most pressing challenges in the education sector in the Philippines. In the Philippines, there is a key need for this as a country, they scored near the bottom globally in the Programme for International Student Assessment, or PISA, in their 2022 report. So looking at some EdTech initiatives in other low and middle income countries, as well as existing EdTech solutions being deployed in the Philippines, we arrived at 6 popular use cases of EdTech that can be scaled. In terms of methodology, we relied on a mix of qualitative interviews, a roundtable conducted in Manila with key stakeholders in the space, as well as a literature review of existing resources. So then, what is the importance of a strong education sector? Strong education and learning outcomes are key to ensure that a country can continue to grow economically and tap into its young demographic, which will be its future workforce. In the Philippines, the percentage of public schools underscores the need to strengthen the delivery of education in public schools and also the opportunity to deploy EdTech solutions at scale. The youth population in the Philippines of about 30 million, as well as the geographical diversity in the country, also presents a unique opportunity to tailor EdTech solutions to the varied needs of regions. So now a note on connectivity and EdTech. So again, looking specifically at the Philippines, the proportion of smartphone connections in the country is estimated to increase from 86% as of 2023 to 95% by 2030. Another enabling factor is the rapid projected increase in 5G connections, which will account for nearly half of mobile connections by 2030. 5G paved the way for the use of more mobile-based EdTech solutions, including video conferencing, online content delivery, and virtual classrooms. The increase in smartphone penetration and 5G connectivity will also be coupled with planned investments by the government and private sector players, including the Maharlika Fund. EdTech as an area has also been marked as the third most popular preference by investors in the Philippines, according to PwC. So what are some of the challenges faced in the education sector? So first, we have the impacts of climate change, which are affecting countries across the world in many different ways. And the education sector is one area which is particularly impacted. Climate events like heat waves, typhoons, floods, and heavy rainfall disrupt the delivery of education and lead to school closures, destruction of school infrastructure, and loss of resources like textbooks. In the Philippines, more than 7,000 schools were closed in April 2024 because of a heat wave. Now looking at extended school closures. The COVID-19 pandemic presented a huge disruption to learning. And in the Philippines, it was the last country to reopen its schools after the pandemic. These extended school closures have had a widespread effect on learning outcomes in schools, resulting in considerable learning loss, as well as an increase in out-of-school youth who did not return to school after the pandemic. Finally, we have school infrastructure. So in the Philippines, there is a disparity in school resources, things like textbooks, learning materials, and also infrastructure available to students across different regions in the Philippines. This is especially the case in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas compared to urban and peri-urban areas. The lack of resources, as well as sufficient teacher capacity, has also led to the prevalence of multi-grade classrooms. And this also has an additional impact on the quality of teaching for students. So then, where does digital, mobile, and EdTech solutions come in? So whilst EdTech is not a silver bullet, EdTech solutions have the potential to address some of the most pressing challenges. On the screen, you can see some of the key challenges in what form EdTech can be used and the impact it would have. So based on interviews with key informants and looking at relevant examples in other low and middle income countries, we have identified 6 use cases of EdTech. So these are offline learning platforms, adaptive learning, virtual classrooms, learning management systems, gamified learning platforms, and online learning platforms. So we are aware that there's a lot of overlap between these different use cases. We have created these based on their key features and have categorized the solutions based on these key features. So now I'm going to spend some time explaining each of these use cases and highlighting a couple of solutions. So first we have offline learning platforms. So these provide cached or downloadable content which can be stored on mobile phones or external hard drives. Offline learning platforms are particularly relevant for low connectivity settings and inaccessible areas to enable teachers and students to access digital learning content when they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. Adaptive learning is one of the more emerging use cases. And so this is where learning is customized on specified learning goals and the past performance of the individual user. Personalized learning can help teachers to identify and focus on students that may require more support. And tools like generative AI are being increasingly used to automate the content delivery in adaptive learning. We then have virtual classrooms. So these would be live broadcasted or pre-recorded lessons that can be played by teachers inside the classroom. They can be useful in enhancing face-to-face teaching in situations where there are a shortage of teachers or low numbers of students per grade, supporting teachers to provide a high-quality teaching at a range of learning levels. So multi-grade classrooms is a context where this would be particularly applicable. So now to deep dive into a couple of solutions. So first we have AdaptoX, which is being deployed in Indonesia. So AdaptoX is a part of Ruang Guru's learning platform, Ruang Belajar. The idea is to introduce simulations and interactive games in the middle of educational videos so that students can test what they have learned up to then, and also to break the monotony of following online learning levels. AI is used to adapt these little snippets to the learning level of the individual user based on their performance in these educational videos and quizzes. EdCas's Connected Classrooms is a solution being deployed in Pakistan. So Connected Classrooms provides schools with access to live online lectures via a monthly subscription. So that would be a monthly subscription to the school. This is especially relevant in socio-economically challenged areas in Pakistan. They provide access to the lectures as well as tripods, speakers, and 4G hotspots so that schools can join the network. They also provide regular testing and student assessment and grading via WhatsApp. So now looking at the last three use cases of EdTech. So we have learning management systems. These are software applications or web-based platforms that facilitate the creation, delivery, and reporting of learning. Learning management systems is one of the most deployed use cases of EdTech in the Philippines and across other countries as well. Learning management systems are used by students to access a range of digital content and other resources, and by teachers and school administrators for resource management, student grading and assessment, amongst some other uses as well. We then have gamified learning platforms. So this is, again, a more emerging use case, like with adaptive learning. So gamified learning platforms use game elements and mechanics in learning activities to increase student engagement and motivation. Gamified learning platforms aim to make learning more interactive for students, especially in subjects like mathematics and science, where content can become quite repetitive and at times a bit monotonous to some students. And we also found applications of gamified learning platforms where they are employed by teacher training platforms to upskill teachers in areas like language or in learning delivery or with specific content. Finally, we have online learning platforms. So these are mobile or web-based platforms that provide interactive and customized learning content. These are particularly relevant when face-to-face learning is not possible, and they enable users to progress at their own learning pace. So these are useful in situations where there's school closures, such as due to extreme climate events, so whether that be heat waves, floods, that kind of thing, or in the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that there was a kind of a rise in using these kind of platforms. So now to deep dive into a couple more solutions. So we have EdMicro, which is an EdTech based in Vietnam. So they have built a learning management system for schools and have a teacher-focused approach to onboarding new schools, sorry. So they have a 3-month training program for teachers to familiarize themselves with the platform, and they use a popular messaging app called Zalo, which is similar to WeChat and Viber, for teachers to ask questions throughout this training program and beyond on how to use the learning management system, any troubleshooting things that they come across can all be sorted through this Zalo chat. Finally, we have Upgrad in India, which provides online higher education for post-12 graders to simulate the experience of attending university in person. So these courses are designed to be completed on laptops and desktops and range from 2 to 3 days for technical courses to 2 to 3 years for master's and doctorate courses. Their most popular courses include law, management courses, digital marketing, and business management. So Upgrad has its own in-house learning management system, and they produce the content themselves, sometimes in collaboration with industry experts to ensure their students are equipped for what they do after university, so what they're doing with the degree, and also in collaboration with certain universities as well. Now looking specifically at AI in education. So the use of emerging technologies like AI presents a huge opportunity for the EdTech space. We have covered some examples of EdTech solutions that are already experimenting with using predictive and generative AI to enhance their existing solutions. There is also potential to combine AI tools with other emerging technologies like AR, VR, robotics, computer vision, and speech recognition to build even more sophisticated EdTech tools. Computer vision and speech recognition can be applied in gamified and adaptive learning platforms. Natural language processing can also be leveraged for the early recognition of learning difficulties in students and also to enable the design of accessible EdTech tools. AI can also be leveraged with natural language processing in the grading and assessment processes. So to deep dive into a couple of the solutions that we included as part of our research that are using AI. So in Pakistan, EdTech startup Erenda is leveraging generative AI on their learning platform Talimabad to extract data directly from textbooks, including transcribing the text, identifying exercises, and provided structured lesson plans aligned with the national education curriculum. With generative AI, Erenda hopes to reduce the time taken for the generation of lesson plans from 6 to 8 months down to about 60 to 80 days. The lesson plans are currently available in English and Urdu, and Arenda is exploring how to incorporate local languages such as Balochi, Sindhi, and Pashto. We then have Rocket Learning in India. So Rocket Learning is working on a predictive AI solution to customize their early childhood learning program to meet the unique needs of daycare workers and parents and caregivers who use their content. They use WhatsApp to share content like videos, activities, and tasks. And Rocket Learning has showed progress in helping young learners to improve their language and pre-literacy skills. So now looking at the parameters to address the effectiveness of EdTech solutions. So up here on the screen, you can see a framework that we created as part of our research. And it's got a number, I think it's seven elements to it. I'm going to spend some time just talking through a couple of them. So there is a key need for measurable learning outcomes. So at the moment, we found that there is a lack of uniformity in how different EdTech initiatives are defining their monitoring and evaluation outcomes. What this means is that it's difficult to see what EdTech solutions are actually working and how these can be improved and the real impact that they are having. So there is a need to focus on predefined learning outcomes to help inform how EdTech is used and the strategies of using EdTech. Inclusivity is another really important element. So there is a need for local language content and also to cater to students with different learning needs. So this may be students who have different accessibility needs, students who are in areas with differing levels of connectivity, maybe have differing, there's different device availability in the school, for example. So now looking at barriers to the development, deployment, and adoption of EdTech. So again, there's 5 here up on the slide that we identified as part of the research, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking through 2 or 3 of those. So first, I want to talk about accessibility. So it's really key that solutions are aligned with the ground reality of users. So this could be things like device availability, access to internet, and capacity of teachers. It is important with EdTech to not forget that legacy technologies like television can also be really powerful tools to deliver digital content. Then have capacity building and training. So it's really important to tailor teacher training programs to the needs and the preferences of the teachers. It's definitely not a one size fits all. Teachers have different existing capacities on using EdTech tools, different interests in using EdTech tools. And it is key to remember here that blended learning is super key. So EdTech should never replace teachers, but it should be there to support them in the delivery of engaging and relevant educational content. It's also important to include digital skill building for parents and caregivers. As key stakeholders in their children's education, it's really important that they understand how these EdTech solutions are being used and how to use them themselves so they can effectively support their child. So I would like to end now by just touching on some of the key takeaways that we had from our research. So what you can see here on the slide is the key takeaway that we found, and then on the right-hand side, the key recommendation, and then who we think are the key stakeholders that should be involved in that recommendation. So as I mentioned earlier, there is limited knowledge sharing on learning and best practices from EdTech, and a lack of evidence of impact. And what this is doing is just stopping EdTech from being able to advance, and from sort of all of the different stakeholders involved in EdTech to be able to really see where EdTech is improving education delivery and where perhaps like a particular EdTech tool isn't working. So what we recommend is to establish uniform monitoring and evaluation and impact measurement metrics. So the stakeholders involved in this would be government, civil society organizations, development partners, and research institutions. Another key thing that we found was that teacher training and capacity building efforts are not equipping teachers to implement EdTech solutions in schools. So one of the key things that we learn is that training on EdTech for teachers is very piecemeal. And sometimes it's just teaching the teachers how to use the tool, not how to teach with the tool. So what we recommend is that there is a review of teacher training and capacity building programs to understand baseline skills levels of teachers and to understand how they actually want to implement EdTech solutions in their classrooms, and how they can be best supported to do that. So the stakeholders involved in that would be the government, the teachers themselves, and also the startups who have created, or the solution providers that have created these EdTech tools. Another key finding that we had is that there is low student engagement and motivation to continue using EdTech solutions beyond pilot projects and programs. So we found that there was a lot of solutions. So this is looking particularly at the Philippines, and though could be applied to other countries as well. Is that we found that a lot of pilots had been conducted on using particular EdTech tools in different schools and in different classrooms, but that the projects didn't really go beyond that pilot. And once that pilot had completed, it was then moved on to another pilot. So there wasn't really that time to kind of take the time to really implement an EdTech solution. So what we suggest is that there is an incorporation of local learning environments and constraints in the design of EdTech solutions to enhance the engagement and to ensure the sustainability in the use of those different EdTech solutions beyond pilot stage. The next finding that we had was that the inclusive and equitable adoption of EdTech hinges on the establishment of a national policy or strategy. So there is a key need to improve collaboration within and between government agencies through a shared vision and priorities for EdTech adoption. And key to that is also to engage key stakeholders, so that would be schools, in the development of those strategies. So the final two takeaways now. So multi-stakeholder partnerships are critical to scaling EdTech solutions. Our recommendation for this is that there is the establishment of stronger links between EdTech ecosystem actors through convenings and knowledge sharing around key priorities. So that would be through platforms such as this. And finally, emerging technologies like AI can be really key to accelerating the adoption of EdTech. So what we recommend for that is that there is the division of a dedicated strategy to integrate emerging tech in education delivery, with a focus on building AI fundamentals and baseline skills to be able to use AI. So that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I really encourage you to put some comments in the chat if you've got any questions. If you felt that anything particularly resonates with you, you have similar experiences, we'd really love to hear about it. In case you are watching this on record, you will be able to find our contact details on the presenter page in the app or the website, and we would be happy for you to email us any questions or to connect with us via LinkedIn or email. So thank you very much, and I will pause now.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. That was a fantastic presentation. Really took a lot away from that, and I certainly have a lot of questions about what you shared. I thought I might just start out with asking one thing. It sort of occurred to me as you were presenting, and I kept waiting for you to talk about it, but it didn't come up. And maybe it just represents where we are in the world today. But you didn't talk much about accessibility. You know, I've been doing this EdTech thing long enough that, like, it used to be the big conversation point around EdTech adoption, and the challenge was accessibility to devices. And you didn't talk much about that. Is that sort of just a given that kids have devices now that they can use, and is that no longer a big barrier at this point?
It definitely is a barrier, and it is a key consideration when thinking about what types of EdTech tools you'll be using in the classroom or outside of the classroom. So what I think is key to kind of emphasize is that we're looking here at blended learning, so using EdTech tools in addition to the standard teaching. So to do that, you need to look at things like device ratio, how many students in the classroom have a device, and how you can use EdTech tools to accommodate that. So another key thing is that we don't want to create a situation where it's just students just on their iPad or their phone using these EdTech solutions and kind of very honed into their own space. We want to still be able to encourage conversation and group learning. So to answer your question, yes, device availability and accessibility in that way is really key. But I think if EdTech tools are used appropriately, there is many situations in a classroom where you could use maybe one device for the whole classroom or for a whole group. So should hopefully help to mitigate some of those challenges. But yes, of course, in some situations, it's still quite difficult, and we need to think about combining with the things like the legacy tools when I spoke about using television or even radio in some cases to deliver these EdTech tools.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess it's also where you really need to have, you know, there's not one size fits all solution, right? It's
Exactly.
very localized down to the country level or even the school level, right? About what is available and how you can make best use of the resources that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Before you get more resources. I was also curious, you know, all of the examples you shared, and this is kind of a comment, I guess, on the EdTech space, that it is very bifurcated and localized, right? Like the solutions in one country are very different than another country. The only things that I guess are very cut across all countries to some extent are like the Google, you know, tools, the Microsoft tools, which typically are employed for free by schools. I'm curious why you didn't mention that, and the examples you shared seem to be almost deliberately very like localized to different markets, and I wondered if there was anything behind that decision to share those ones.
So I think when thinking about the solutions that I mentioned being quite localized, I think, well, through our findings that we found as well, that is actually quite a key thing in these EdTech solutions being successful. So you need things like teacher buy-in and student buy-in and all these kind of things. And if the solution has kind of been curated really with that localized context in mind, it increases, it increases that buy-in and it increases the usefulness of that tool, of that EdTech tool. So when we're thinking about things like localized language, so the Philippines, for example, is many different languages when you go out into different islands and that kind of thing. And I spoke about the EdCasa solution in Pakistan. And again, that's a country where there's lots of different languages and different cultural contexts, nuances, lots of different nuances in the way that teaching is delivered. So I think it can be quite key for these solutions to be built by people who really understand what those situations and what those contexts are like.
So it's in one way, it's a it's a benefit and like maybe a necessary thing, but it's also a limiting factor, right? Because one of the things about technology is it's supposed to scale, but if you got everyone in every country essentially reinventing the wheel and creating lots of different versions of is more or less the same thing, then maybe that slows down adoption and innovation, overall.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that being a thing. So it's again some of the bigger solutions, the kind of cross-cutting across multiple countries that we looked at as part of our research with things like ADB and UNICEF. So they have there's the same solution spanning across multiple countries, and even then there's still quite a few silos existing in those different implementing teams in the separate countries actually talking to each other and sharing knowledge. So yeah, I agree.
I also want to really, I wanted to say amen when you were talking about like the importance of teacher training and professional learning development. And I like the term you use, local learning environments. I think that's so key. I remember talking with Professor Punya Mishra a few years ago. I was talking about the impact of research, right, on EdTech, and the challenge that particularly traditional academic research, the time frame under which it takes place to do it properly is years. So if you're doing an impact study on the iPads in education, iPad is no longer even a tool, right? By the time the report comes out. So to what extent is that actually useful? And so the term he used was that educators need to be researchers and researchers need to be closer to education, right? You need to bring all of these things together. So I wondered if you might respond to that and just add any more commentary around that whole importance of schools really and classrooms taking the lead on the evaluation piece and not necessarily being able to rely on some official report that is the be all and end all about the effectiveness of tools. Like it needs to be done at the local level ultimately.
Yeah, so that definitely resonates a lot with me. So one of the key things and the tools that we had actually as part of our research was the use of smart boards and smart whiteboards. That was something that kind of came in, everyone was told that, yeah, this is the key tool, everyone needs to use it. And then it just kind of dropped out and it kind of moved on to the next thing. Yeah, what you said there as well about it really needing to be in the hands of the teacher and that localized kind of impact driven is super important. I think if you have kind of a broad, wide study of, say, the EdTech tool X is the tool to use, and this is the most impactful, and this is going to improve student education in mathematics, say, going down into the individual school, individual classroom, either the individual teacher giving those lessons, the impact is going to look slightly different depending on the preferences of the teacher, the particular students in the classroom. All those kind of things will impact. So what we think is that it is really important for the teachers to be able to kind of take that autonomy in choosing what EdTech tools they want to use and what they think will improve the performance of education in their classroom the most. And then those teachers need to kind of be equipped with the tools to be able to make a judgment call on how effective that tool is being. So the wider research is, of course, super important and can help to sort of direct teachers in what EdTech tools to pick up. But yes, as you'd said, it's that really hyper localized it is even to the specific classroom, the specific teachers is really important. And those teachers kind of need to be given the space to be able to explore the EdTech tools that they want to use.
Yeah, that's great. Very well said. Yeah, I think that giving them the space is key. I like to use the term agency. I think teachers need to have agency to try things out, and that also comes down to the culture of the school as well, right? Like you have to be willing to try things out. Maybe it doesn't work out, willing to fail. I think that's a really key thing. Could you talk about in the research you did, an example of really high impact ed tech in a school or a classroom that you found?
Of a particular use case of EdTech?
Yes.
So one of the key ones for me was the EdCasa connected classroom, which I mentioned earlier on in the report. So the reason that they work so well is because they've really curated their solution. So they're based in Pakistan. They've really created their solution to the specific context and the specific need that's there. So in rural Pakistan, there is a lot of multi-grade classrooms in schools that don't have broadband connectivity necessarily. So what they've done is they've created this virtual classrooms solution where teachers, what is needed in the classroom is a teaching facilitator, and then they run all of the lessons via these virtual broadcasted lessons, and these lessons are live, so multiple classrooms in different schools have these same live presentations. There's a lot of tools that go alongside that, such as a WhatsApp assessment, grading, all of that kind of thing is done by EdCasa. And yeah, it just works really well because it's hyper localized. It's available in different local Pakistan languages, based on, they have content dependent on what textbook the school wants to use and that kind of thing. In terms of inside the classroom, or another solution, which is more far-reaching, is the one that's based in Vietnam. So it's EdMicro, so it's the learning management system. So again, the reason why that one really excels is because they've really thought about the local context. So a key thing for them is the consistent conversation with teachers that are using the learning management system. So they use Zello, but it could very easily be another messaging platform. And they have a very extensive teacher training course in how to use that learning management system, and then have this consistent open conversation between teachers and themselves on how to use the platform, and to troubleshoot any issues that they would have.
That's great. And last question for me is, if you're a stakeholder, let's say you're a parent or a caregiver of a child, how can you get involved in helping implement EdTech solutions, with the school or at home with your child?
Thank you. It's a good question. So I think parents and caregivers can get involved in the way in advocacy, I guess at the school level. So if there's solutions that they really feel like will support their support the teachers in the school to help with the delivery of students. So whether that be tools that can be used in the classroom, tools that would be more used at home, so with homework, for example, there is a lot out there. So I guess it's kind of to do that research and to engage with the school in the conversations that the school is having about what EdTech solutions they're thinking of, just to kind of create that conversation. So it's not so much the school necessarily saying that this is what we're going to use, to just kind of keep that open dialogue so it can kind of be more collaborative.
That's great. Being an advocate, I think that's totally agree with that. Well, thank you very much, Lauren. Really appreciate you sharing today, and I've enjoyed the Q&A and getting to know a little bit more about what your research is. I think it's important work, and we really appreciate you sharing it with our audience today.
Thank you very much, Justin, and thank you very much for giving us this space to have this conversation and to discuss EdTech. Yes, please, anybody email if you have any further questions. We're keen on continuing and keeping the conversation going.
All right, fantastic. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks very much, Justin.